You really think you knew these celebrities? Or did Hollywood just hand you a version easy enough not to question? For many Americans who grew up in a different era, gender identity feels confusing, even inconvenient to confront. But confusion doesn't erase reality. Behind the fame are lives shaped by pressure, reinvention, and choices that didn't fit the script you were sold. Keep watching, because today we're exposing transgender celebrity transformations, the hidden timelines, the moments they couldn't hide anymore, and one reveal that will completely reframe how you see fame itself. You don't just wake up at 65 and decide to rewrite your entire identity, unless that story's been building for decades. Caitlyn Jenner didn't emerge out of nowhere. Long before the world knew her by that name, she was Bruce Jenner, a national hero who won gold in the decathlon at the 1976 Summer Olympics. To the public, it looked like the perfect American success story. Privately, it was far more complicated. From an early age, Jenner experienced a deep sense of disconnect between outward expectations and internal identity. But growing up in mid-20th century America meant there were few words and even less acceptance for something like gender dysphoria. So like many in that generation, she adapted. She built a career, raised a family, and maintained an image that fit what society expected to see. Stability on the outside didn't erase the tension underneath. In the late 1980s, Jenner quietly began exploring transition, including hormone therapy, but paused due to concerns about family and public scrutiny. That decision may have preserved her public life, but it didn't resolve the private struggle. By her 60s, the cost of silence had grown too heavy to ignore. In 2015, at age 65, she publicly introduced herself as Caitlyn Jenner. It wasn't a sudden change, it was the conclusion of a lifelong internal negotiation. Her story forced many Americans, especially older generations, to confront a difficult question. Is it ever too late to live honestly, or just too uncomfortable to admit the truth? You don't build a Hollywood career, earn critical praise, and still feel like you're playing the wrong role, unless something deeper has been off the entire time. Elliot Page didn't arrive at his truth overnight. Long before any public statement, his journey unfolded quietly, shaped by years of internal conflict, reflection, and the exhausting effort of maintaining an image that never fully fit. Many audiences first recognized him in Juno, a performance that earned widespread acclaim and an Academy Award nomination. On the surface, everything looked like success, but behind that recognition was a growing discomfort, one that Hollywood's expectations only made harder to confront openly. For years, Page navigated gender dysphoria in private, carrying the emotional weight of presenting a version of himself that felt incomplete. By December 2020, the balance shifted. In a sincere public message, he shared that he is transgender. It wasn't a reinvention, it was a decision to stop performing and start living honestly. Since then, Page has spoken about a clearer sense of peace and alignment. In The Umbrella Academy, his character's transition into Victor reflected that reality on screen, offering representation that felt measured rather than performative. His story doesn't ask for approval. It quietly challenges a generation raised on fixed identities to reconsider something uncomfortable. Maybe the real performance wasn't the transition, but everything that came before it. Some rumors don't just bend reality, they completely abandon it. At one point, the internet seriously entertained the idea that Chanel West Coast and Lee Norris were secretly the same person. Yes, really. The theory leaned heavily on supposed facial similarities, as if a vague resemblance could somehow override two entirely separate careers and identities. For viewers who remember Boy Meets World, Lee Norris was firmly established as Stuart Minkus, a character that became part of classic American television. He later continued acting, including a steady role on One Tree Hill. Meanwhile, Chanel West Coast built her own path in entertainment, gaining recognition on Rob Dyrdek's Fantasy Factory, where her high-energy presence and distinctive voice made her hard to miss. She went on to develop a career in music and business, shaping a brand that is clearly her own. Still, the rumor spread far enough that some people began to question it seriously. Instead of reacting emotionally, Chanel addressed it with notable restraint, pointing out the obvious while keeping the focus on respect and accuracy. No dramatic rebuttal, no spectacle, just a reminder that identity isn't something to be casually rewritten for entertainment. In an era where speculation travels faster than facts, her response stands out. Not because the rumor deserved attention, but because she refused to let it define her. Some athletes fight opponents. Others end up fighting an entire system that isn't sure what to do with them. Fallon Fox became one of those cases, whether the sports world was ready or not. Her story was never just about wins and losses. It quickly turned into a national debate about identity, fairness, and the rules people suddenly cared a lot more about. Born in Ohio, Fox experienced a disconnect with her assigned gender from an early age, at a time when those conversations were often avoided rather than understood. Like many from that generation, she kept her struggles private, and when she did begin to open up, the response from family and society wasn't exactly supportive. So the conflict didn't disappear, it just went underground. As an adult, she chose to transition, not for attention, but because continuing otherwise wasn't sustainable. After completing her transition, Fox entered professional mixed martial arts, a decision that guaranteed attention whether anyone liked it or not. In 2013, she became the first openly transgender woman to compete in professional MMA, and that milestone immediately triggered a wave of public reaction. Supporters framed her as progress. Critics questioned competitive fairness in a sport built on physical advantage. Meanwhile, the actual athlete kept competing, largely overshadowed by arguments happening around her. Growing up famous is already complicated. Growing up famous while quietly questioning your own identity? That's a different level of pressure most audiences prefer not to think about. Chaz Bono didn't arrive at his transition suddenly. It was shaped over decades, under constant public attention, and within a family the world felt entitled to watch. As the child of Sonny Bono and Cher, Chaz was known from an early age as Chastity Bono. The public saw a narrative that made sense to them. Privately, it didn't. From childhood, there was a persistent sense that the role assigned to him didn't quite fit, but in an era with limited understanding of gender identity, that kind of discomfort was often ignored or misunderstood. For years, he tried to meet expectations, following a path that seemed acceptable to both family and society, but living under scrutiny didn't make the internal conflict disappear, it amplified it. By his late 30s, Chaz recognized that continuing that way wasn't sustainable. Around 2008, he began transitioning, taking deliberate steps, including hormone therapy and medical care. The process wasn't just personal, it also challenged family dynamics, particularly with Cher, who later admitted the adjustment was difficult at first, even as her support remained constant. Over time, understanding replaced uncertainty. His story doesn't offer easy answers. It simply forces a reality many would rather avoid. Sometimes the hardest part isn't changing. It's admitting the original story was never accurate. Fashion loves rules. Then someone shows up who quietly ignores all of them, and suddenly the industry pretends it was always flexible. Andrea Pejic built her career in exactly that space, where categories were supposed to be fixed until they weren't. Born in Bosnia and Herzegovina during a period of conflict, she later relocated to Australia, carrying with her an early sense that the identity assigned at birth didn't fully align with who she was. As a model, she gained international attention for her androgynous appearance, walking in both men's and women's shows at a time when the fashion world still insisted on clear divisions. Designers praised the look. The industry benefited from it. But the personal reality behind that image was more complicated. As her career expanded across Europe and the United States, the gap between public success and private identity became harder to ignore. For years, she weighed the risks of transitioning in an industry where image is currency and stability is never guaranteed. In 2014, she publicly confirmed her transition, a decision that could have easily ended her career. It didn't. Instead, she continued working, proving that authenticity didn't weaken her position, it clarified it. Her presence forced an industry built on appearances to confront something deeper than aesthetics. Reality TV loves a clear narrative. Then someone steps off the stage and refuses to stay in the role they were given. Carmen Carrera first entered public view on RuPaul's Drag Race Season 3, where she was known as a polished and confident drag performer. For many viewers, that seemed like the whole story. It wasn't. After the show, Carrera made the decision to transition and live openly as a transgender woman. For audiences unfamiliar with the distinction, drag and identity were often blurred together, leading to confusion and at times misplaced assumptions. She moved forward anyway, choosing clarity over comfort and authenticity over approval, even as the scrutiny intensified. Her willingness to speak openly extended beyond her personal journey. At one point, she publicly challenged comments made by RuPaul, arguing that certain language used in entertainment could be harmful to transgender women. The moment sparked predictable debate, but Carrera remained consistent in her message. Respect should not be optional, even in spaces built on performance. At the same time, her career didn't stall. She transitioned into fashion modeling, working with established designers and appearing in major publications. Over time, her focus shifted toward growth and perspective rather than conflict. Her story doesn't simplify anything. It highlights something less comfortable. Sometimes the biggest shift isn't on stage. It's what happens after the audience thinks the show is over. After all the headlines, debates, and carefully packaged opinions, what's left is harder to dismiss. The stories of Caitlyn Jenner, Elliot Page, Chaz Bono, Andrea Pejic, Carmen Carrera, and Fallon Fox don't follow one script, and that's exactly the point. Different paths, different timelines, same uncomfortable theme. Living honestly tends to disrupt what people thought was settled. For those who've watched decades of cultural shifts, this isn't just about change, it's about perspective. Identity doesn't adjust itself to public comfort, and understanding rarely arrives all at once. It takes time, whether people like that or not. In the end, the noise fades. What remains is simpler and maybe more inconvenient. Dignity, patience, and the quiet insistence on being real tend to outlast opinion. If you've made it this far, you already know this conversation isn't going away.